Welcome to another episode of Behind the Studs, your home improvement and remodeling podcast, where the two most entertaining guys discuss the do's and don'ts in home construction and in the remodeling industry. Remember that you can nail it, paint it, or just tune into the show. How about that? Here are your hosts, Colin Shaw and Jimmy Driscoll.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Behind the Studs. We have me, Colin, joined by
Jimmy Driscoll.
Jimmy, that's right, I remember him. Yeah, Jimmy, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good, tired, wet, and flat out, just exhausted like the rest of us.
What is going on with the weather around here?
It's
just been horrible.
Well, Seattle moved to here.
Is that
That's exactly what happened, because they got no rain. We got it all now.
I always said I wanted to be out of Connecticut, but I'm not sure I want to be in Seattle either, though.
Well, I got a kayak outside.
Oh, there you go. Beautiful.
Ready to go.
It's a nice way to get here.
Unfreaking believable.
So, hey, we have another guest with us, another remote guest, which is kind of cool.
From Chicago.
Right from the Windy City.
That's right.
How's the weather over there today, Paul?
You know, it seems like we're getting the same thing you guys are getting it. I keep on making the comment, it feels like Seattle across the country. It's just relentless rain. And as we speak, it's raining out there. So yeah.
Is it? Yeah, we had thunderstorms today and rain and cold. And
just stopped.
Yeah, it's awful.
Just stopped.
Awful. So yeah, so it's our guest today is Paul Barthel.
Paul Barthel.
Yep, and he is with a company called EcoBond.
EcoBond,
which is a really, really cool product that we're going to learn a lot about.
Nice.
The previous episode we did discuss that he was going to be joining us, talk about lead paint and a product that he has that actually encapsulates the lead and makes it safe to work around.
That's great.
So Paul, tell us a little bit about you, about your company, what you do for the company.
Yeah, going right into it, what it is, it's actually a leave-on paint application that seals and treats existing lead on the substrate.
Okay.
First off, I want to thank you guys for allowing me to discuss the product. Certainly, we're in a diminishing industry as less and less homes across the country are inflicted with lead. There's still over 35 million homes with lead. A lot of people don't know that.
Wow,
now
that many.
Chicago has a lot of lead. From what I just saw a show on CNN, and they were just talking about that. From what I understand, am I led to be correct, or am I wrong? Or
we have a lot of lead. You guys, certainly the East Coast, have. The East Coast is primarily one of our strongest markets. I got to tell you. New York, Connecticut, Philadelphia. For instance, we're in Philadelphia schools right now. They fairly recently received like $80 million in funding to eradicate the lead in the schools. And we are one of the approved products, and we're very proud of that.
Wow. Oh, that's very cool.
Good.
Now, it's the state or is it federal funding that these school systems get?
That was state funding. Yeah.
State funding. Really? Wow.
That's fantastic.
That's great.
Lucky.
I don't want to say it's an epidemic, but it's across the country, this infliction, as I don't know if you guys are aware. I'm certainly aware because every day I'm in the trenches reading about it, reaching out to people who have this. 3 days ago, I was in Cleveland at a lead summit, if you will. There is such a thing. And
nice.
The doctor who broke the story there in Flint, Michigan, I'm sure you're all familiar with that. She wrote a book. I actually have it next to me, and I was reading some of it. I haven't had a chance to dive into it too much, but the reluctance for the officials to come forward and admit what a problem it was, and she broke that story, and I guess the book is doing really well. So
it should.
Well,
so of course that's with water, of course, not lead.
Right. But still, hazardous material to the general public, and they're not aware necessarily of it, until they're educated on it. So, it's good that people like her write a book, and people like yourself who come up with these products to try to help protect the homeowners and those that live in those houses that have lead. And I do know we have a lot around here because of the historic homes that date back so long. Most of our buildings are older than, what was it, 78? Is that when it was banned, the lead?
Yes, 78. I got some interesting statistics here, actually.
Yeah.
What was it? Prior to 1940, 69% of all homes had lead paint. It wasn't.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was almost every home, and and because of lead and its properties, it was an excellent product at the time. And little did we know, or we claimed we didn't know. Yeah, I don't know if you're familiar with that lawsuit in California, but it has excellent properties. It dries quick. It's very durable. In fact, there's homes still standing now where the lead is still on the substrate and not coming off the walls. It's that durable. So
yeah, well, they put lead in everything, right? Back in the day,
they did, and they still do. It's in cosmetics sent to us from China. It's in a lot of toys sent from us from China. Even to this day, we were careful to try to weed those products coming into this country. But a lot of third world countries, because of the lack of funding, perhaps knowledge, or the wherewithal, the lack of means, they still use lead paint. You know.
So I got two stories for you, real quick, Paul.
Yeah.
One,
yeah.
when I was in college, I took a theater course, and I had to take this course on costumes, and we were talking about the different periods for the theater shows, and we were in the Elizabethan period. Well, all the whiteface, when women would wear whiteface, and they had white paint on their face. It was lead paint, and most of the women became terminally ill from it. They got tuberculosis, and they just got cancer from all that lead on their chest and then on all their skin. That was one story that I learned, and the other one was when I was working for McDonald's.
Oh, geez, not again.
Remember back, Paul? You got to go back and listen to one of the episodes when I worked for McDonald's. I drove a Big Mac years ago when I was in college. I'm not shitting you. I did. Well,
you got to listen to that one, Paul.
They had a big promotion, and you probably remember this. They had McDonald's glasses that you would get.
Oh, no.
If you got a soft drink, remember?
Yeah, I do.
And they had all the figurines on the glass.
Yeah.
Where'd they come from? I think they were made in China.
Yeah, probably.
They had to recall all of them because they found out all the paint on the figurines was lead.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was in the early 80s. That was probably early 80s when that happened.
That one I did not hear about, but I do recall your first story, and I don't remember what queen it was, but I believe...
Queen Elizabeth. It was Queen Elizabeth.
She died, and on her face was makeup so thick that I don't know, it wasn't an inch, but her face was actually larger from all the makeup that she would keep on her face. And it was lead at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. Ain't that something?
Yeah. Yep.
Wow. That's crazy. I just finished a job. Let me back up. I just looked at a job that had lead on it. And I told the homeowner, I said, listen, I can't touch this. You need to have someone who does lead abatement because they want to get it down to a smooth surface. And I said, I know someone who does that, who can get it down there, but it's a process and it's expensive. I said, or we can paint over it. And they didn't want to do that because they wanted a smooth surface. So I'm leading into you now, Paul. So if we had lead on a material like a doorway, window panes, old house, that's when your product comes into effect? Is that how it works?
Yeah. First off, going back to what you just said, I hear this every day. Contractors who were once RRP certified no longer want to do the type of work.
Why?
Absolutely.
Why?
For a
So much
variety
work?
of reasons.
The
reaction from the homeowner when they have to hand them the bill.
Right.
Because it's inflated because of all the extra work, the tarp they have to lay down, their certification, the products they have to use, the extra labor, the potential for fines, the insurance that they have to carry. If somebody becomes ill, the child ingests that lead paint at a project, they're responsible.
Right.
Yeah. So I ain't doing it. Bye.
I'll tell you what, I'm certified, Paul, and
you don't do it probably.
You know what? I stay away from it because of the price. You're exactly right. And, our biggest thing, but, I kind of like the whole idea that, we know you now, we know the product, and we probably don't even have to worry about this anymore. But not every single contractor does the process like they're supposed to. So, one guy's going to be a heck of a lot cheaper because he's not going to care. With the rest of us, we have to worry about, like you said, insurance and everything else, and you got to be careful about what you're doing. So it was talked about around here, at least, that the town officials in the building department were going to start asking for your certification. so that way you could show that you are certified and that you will do the lead abatement like you're supposed to. But again, I love the whole idea about your product where we can just encapsulate it, just get just neutralize it, and then just go from there.
So how does it work, Paul?
Okay. So it uses basically a phosphate reagent. I'm not going to get too scientific. First of all, I don't have a degree in chemistry, but it uses a phosphate reagent which has a natural affinity to lead. So it bonds with the lead on the substrate. So what it's doing, it's actually treating the lead and reducing the bioaccessibility, meaning if you, a child, a worker were to ingest it, it's going to have a tendency to pass through your body as opposed to allowing it to absorb into the bloodstream.
Okay, so let's explain something to the audience. A substrate is
the wall, the brick, what have you, drywall, fascia, stucco, things of that. Water substrate. Towers, things like that, steel. Yeah. So,
okay, all right.
But it also, there's so much to say. It also suppresses the lead dust particulates during any type of renovation or any type of disturbance when perhaps you're demolishing a structure, or like, for instance, in Detroit, where every other home's being demolished, you could cover that house and it renders the waste not only as non-hazardous, but suppresses the lead dust particulates. Our best, our most famous case was in Fort Ord. I believe it was in the 90s. I have not been with the company that long, where we originally tested the product when we demoed, I believe it was 20-something structures. And not only did the air quality sample readings come back as a non-detect in many cases, but the waste was rendered non-haz for disposal under RCRA definition.
That's great. Paul, 2 years ago, I was working a union job in New Haven for Yale. They were taking an old building and building a school out of it. They didn't realize when they started doing the demo to rehab it, and it was covered. The cement was the substrate. The cement was covered in lead paint. So they had people there in biohazard suits. I'm wondering if this was your product. It might not have been, but they were in biohazard suits. They had a biohazard wash also, the shower. And they were applying a product on the substrate, on the cement. And I think it was red. It was some kind of that would encapsulate the lead, and then they would scrape it off. Is that something that your product does, or you just encapsulate it and that's it?
No, you can use it for removal purposes to make it safer and render the waste as non-haz.
Okay, all right.
But
And
it's also a leave-on application.
Is what?
It's also a paint product where it can be used as a leave-on application. Perhaps the lead's in good shape on the wall, and I don't have any intentions of removing it. You could just paint over it.
And it's what, more like a primer at that point then?
For interior primer or finished coat for exterior primer use only. So that's where the bioaccessibility is coming in. And now we also, I have to say this because it's probably a better selling tool. I push for this. We incorporated Bitrix into the resin. I don't know if you're familiar with Bitrix. It makes the product. Well, it's in laundry detergents. It's in some of antifreeze that we use. It makes it taste terrible. It gives it a bitter taste. Yeah. So it's a further deterrent for children and some adults that may be a little slow that want to ingest the lead paint.
Yeah, because people don't realize lead is sweet. So the kids eat the chips because it's sweet. It's like candy. They don't realize what damage they're doing to themselves. That's the danger of it all.
Well, that's why exactly. You're right. And that's why you see in many of these older homes, you see HUD and the municipality fixated on replacing the windows. Why? Because they're the same height as children. Children, they put their mouths on the windowsills, and the sash and the sill itself, a lot of times that was painted in lead, if not the walls. So there's all this money that's out there. And in fact, it was the most money I've seen HUD release, Congress, this year. I believe it was $180 million. And that's going to local municipalities, and they can't give it away. I was at the recent Healthy Homes Conference, and I've never seen the room with that many people. It had over 500 people, all municipalities learning how to address and assess the lead situations in their towns.
Yeah. Can we explain to the audience, in case they don't know, how they can detect lead paint in their house. First of all, they have to know if their house was built before 1978. That's a flag right there, correct? Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, do what you guys got to do.
Nope.
No, we're good.
Okay, that's a very strong indication right there. What you just said, pre-78. I don't want to sound like a salesman, but it's almost definite that there is lead paint in that home somewhere pre-78.
Right.
But don't take that for granted. There are affordable lead test kits, as you guys know, in hardware stores where you can do it yourself.
Correct.
If you want to spend a little more money, you can send it off to a lab, and they'll officially test it for you, where you can do a cross cut with a carpenter's knife or a carpet knife. Take a lead sample, send it off to a lab, and you'll get a confirmation reading with the levels of lead that are on the substrate as well, too. So, but they also have the lead wipe kits in most hardware stores, you know.
Yeah. Okay.
And those
Now,
pens,
what was
we've all seen those pens that you rub on the wall, and then you get a red reading.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are popular.
Yeah. Yep. Turns pink or red or
Yep.
whatever the thing is there. Yeah. So now you were saying something about a lawsuit out in California. What was that about?
Yeah, maybe because I'm inundated with everything going on throughout the country. I could talk forever about it, but I really prefer not to say the paint manufacturers. But there was 3 of them that they're just now settling that lawsuit. I believe it's for $600 million. It was supposed to. Yeah, it was supposed to be 1.1 billion. Where they knowingly, I'm not saying they did, where they knowingly knew that the lead existed in the paint way back when, and still continued to market it. I'm not saying they did or they didn't, but it turns out they lost, and now there's, I believe, 10 counties within California that are going to receive those funds. They have to spend it within 4 years, from what I understand, and now you're seeing it a domino effect across the country. Everybody's now trying to get some of that money. Say, well, hey, California got some. Why not us? Milwaukee,
Right.
Yeah. Across,
yeah.
Sure.
Baltimore. Every day I'm reading it. So yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That's crazy. $600 million. You saw.
Yeah.
What was the weed control thing that you were talking about? What was that? What's that brand?
Roundup.
They just settled for $2 billion
Well,
on their last one.
my friend just went in for brain surgery yesterday, and they removed 3 tumors out of his brain. His largest one was 2 centimeters. And I am waiting today on a call from his sister to tell me how he's doing.
Yeah.
But he got melanoma, and he's been a landscaper for over 20 years, and he's been dealing with that chemical, and this is where he is now.
Yeah.
So
That's crazy.
yeah, it is crazy. Little down for me.
Is he attributing it to Roundup or?
Yeah. Well, he was the man. So he was treating all these houses and buildings, in commercial with, commercial product, and one of them was Roundup. So, and we're all pointing the fingers at it. I mean, it was chemicals that got him. He's in it 12 hours, 14 hours a day. So we actually talked about this before, Paul, with one of our other landscapers that we had on here. Is like you got to stay away from it. It's just, besides the lead that we're talking about right now and the Roundup thing, it's just like it's really coming full circle, where people were saying it's just salt. Well, it's more than that. Excuse me. It's doing damage. It's doing damage to it's killing people. So yes. So on that note, I say that's what it was, because he was in it. He was swimming in it every day. So that's what happened.
Yeah, that's
that's
crazy.
terrible. So sorry to hear about that. That's terrible. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. I'll let you know how he does. I'll
do that.
Yeah.
Now, Paul, you were saying when I was looking through some of the stuff you had sent us about the military housing and lead being prevalent in there. That's still the case?
Yeah, I believe the Senate had a hearing on it. They were so upset, and our paint is also being used in the military housing, those various providers across the country. After, I don't know if you read that article at Reuters when they broke the article. I believe it was like 1,100 children dating back a few years, supposedly came back with elevated blood levels living in military housings. Well,
Wow.
our senators,
Man.
our senators were livid, and they had a hearing, and the housing providers were all there at that hearing, and it looks like they're addressing it, and we're actually proud to be used in various facilities throughout the country. Fort Leavenworth, we're being used at Fort McCord, Fort Knox. So there's a lot of installations we're being used at currently.
Right. So here's my question for you. So we just talked about earlier when we do the whole the lead abatement thing and their insurance is high and everything else like that. What about you? Now, say I'm using your product. All right, I'm going to take care of it. Do I need to be like insurance certified to be using this equipment or to be using this application? Do I need to be trained as a carpenter, as a contractor to know how to apply this? Is it just, I'm throwing you a lot of questions here, but is it more like for commercial application, or can a homeowner apply it? You know?
Yeah, good. That's a good question. I hear it all the time. And the way I handle that question is we always advise to use RRP lead safe practice rules, regardless of when working with our product. And that's it. And what is that? Well, that sort of covers our behind at the same time, but it also, we do care about the integrity of the user. Renovation, repair, painting rules established by EPA HUD. And that is using those, if you're certified, if you're RRP certified, you know what it is, laying down the tarp, wearing the
respirators
the
and everything else.
Using the filtration and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but if lead is in good shape, you're not going to disturb it. More than 6 square feet, you can paint over it, the average homeowner. If it's your home, from what I understand, you can do so what you choose. Our product is available for Home Depot, and we sell it 1 gallon units, 5 gallon units all the time to the average homeowner.
Do you know what the retail cost is on that stuff?
Yeah. 49 a gallon, $2.25 for a 5 gallon. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, that's reasonable.
Well, it's kind of like asbestos here. I know in the state of Connecticut, a homeowner is allowed to, take down asbestos shingles or clean up any sort of asbestos in the interior of their house without any sort of formal training or anything. But there's sites that they have to bring the product to. It has to be in 12 mil plastic, which typically is about 3 or 4 garbage bags, one on top of the other. So, so they can do it, and I'm sure they can do the lead too, but it's a lot of work.
Hey, did you know, I just saw this, you might have seen this, Paul, in The Wizard of Oz, when she's laying there and she's having the dream sequence, and the snow is falling on her. It's not snow, it's asbestos.
No.
It's asbestos. It was on CNN. They were talking about that on The Wizard of Oz. Judy Garland's sleeping. She's sleeping in the field, and it's snowing, and it was snowing asbestos on.
Oh, that explains it.
Yeah.
There you go.
Was she wearing the white makeup at all, or?
No,
she wasn't doing that too.
Didn't have to. Wow.
Tell us about your parent company. MT2?
Yeah. Well, that's where this all started. MT2. Now, you guys might be more interested, or your listeners might be more interested in this. This is where the fun begins. MT2 Metal Treatment Technologies out of Denver, Colorado, is probably the largest remediation company of outdoor firing ranges, and we do both indoor and outdoor. So I'm waiting for you to put 2 and 2 together here. For firing ranges, lead bullets. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Nice.
So the president was able to develop that technology and incorporate it into a paint resin. With that same technology, he's able to treat soil and put the soil back in as non-haz. And with his wisdom, he was able to incorporate it into a paint technology or a resin, and that's where it all began.
Wow, smart guy.
Yeah, he's the brains of the network, and I'm over here doing this. So,
How long have you been working for the company, Paul? How long have you been with him?
I think it's been like 6 years, 7 years now. Yeah.
Nice.
What'd you do before that?
Okay, here we go.
Come on, man.
Were you a contractor like
You
that?
didn't work for McDonald's, did you?
No.
You look familiar.
I think somebody caught wind of what I used to do. It always seems to come up. But previously, I think, Jimmy, you got a background in this. I was an executive chef.
Oh,
Nice.
very cool.
Nice, man.
For like 30 years. One of you guys has got a food background, right?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
I worked.
but
I worked in food and beverage. I worked in hospitality. I was general manager of full service hotels and suit and tie kind of guy. And then one day I just said, "That's it. I can't take it anymore."
You know
Paul,
what?
I ran four nightclubs and I dealt with catering all the time, so that's as close as I came to the food.
So I think I can perhaps speak for all of us. We can go back into it in a minute.
Yep.
But I don't want to say I got burnt out. After 30 years, I didn't get burnt out. I just saw my life, day, night, holidays, weekends, and I was like, when is my time coming?
Right.
Yeah, right.
No, you're absolutely right.
You're so right, bro. So right.
And it's funny. I have always said that my kids, would have to at some point work in a restaurant or hospitality type place so that they could experience what the rest of us experience.
God.
We're a piece of shit to some people. It's like they snap their fingers at you and sort of the thing. So I always want kids to work doing that so that they knew how to behave and act in those situations. So my son right now is actually a busser at an outdoor restaurant, and my daughter cleans rooms at a hotel. So they're learning humility.
Now they need to learn. Now they need to work in a kitchen during the summer.
Yeah,
that's what they need to do. Yeah.
I think that's a good way to do it. You learn to appreciate things, certainly. Yeah, most definitely. I always get a kick out of people working 40 hours a week or perhaps even 50 hours a week. And they're like, oh, man, they killed me this week. I'm like, please, you have no idea.
Stop.
Well, I'll tell you what, I would say by far, hands down, the worst job, or not the worst, the hardest job in a restaurant is executive chef. There's no doubt. There's no doubt. I mean, you're in the heat, in the kitchen, and it's you're slammed and you've got to get everybody, your sous chef and everybody else has got to be just moving right along. And oh man, those guys, that's why, I mean, you don't seem like the type, but pretty much every executive chef I ever knew was yelling and screaming all night long. So they were just so stressed out by it.
Paul, I worked in a steak restaurant out of Andover, and the executive chef was his name was Leo, and he was a Army cook, and he'd been in there for what? Oh, he's been a cook for like 30 years or so. I remember him. He could stick his fingers in boiling water, and he was so funny because he was from Massachusetts, and he'd be like, and he always said to me, I was the salad chef. I was making all the salads. He goes, "Come here, you little pecker bender. You pecker bender. Come here, you pecker bender." That's all he ever called me. Nicest guy.
Yeah, a lot of people will watch Gordon Ramsay and they say, "Oh, that doesn't exist."
Come on.
It does.
It does. I don't know so much currently with all the snowflakes, but you have to be careful now. Mm-hmm. But years ago, I lived it. I was there. You're ducking down, pans are flying across the room. You're being humiliated, and if you're a cook or on prep, you'd be humiliated in front of the whole staff. Yeah,
it's a tough business. For me, my wife and I talk about this often too. Is you hear our kids come home. It's like, so what'd you get for tips? Oh, I made like $50-$60. I'm like, man, I used to love those days.
Right?
You always had cash. You leave the job, cash in your pocket. And I don't know. Paul, if you listen to some of the other episodes, you'll find out how much I hate this state, and I keep wanting to go south. And it seems like every year that comes around, I'm going farther and farther. So now I'm in the Caribbean somewhere. But I always told my wife,
with a machete, and a cell phone.
I told my wife, I said, you know what? I'll go back to bartending. I'll go bartend at a resort, and I'll be happy as can be.
Yeah,
and probably make more money than I do here.
Yeah, we're going to complain about make him a new drink.
If something ever happens to us, we know we can always go back.
Absolutely true.
I think if it really gets down to it and it's terrible, the Three Musketeers will open up our own club restaurant. You know what I mean?
Oh, jeez.
And you can
I got a name for it. We'll call it the Three Transients.
The transients.
All right, I like it.
All right.
I like it.
I can do that.
Yep.
The trans.
Maybe we should invite him to join our rap group too.
You could be in our rap group too, Paul. Yeah.
I am
Yep.
from Chicago, you know.
I'm Papa D.
Yep.
He's Vanilla Milkshake.
Vanilla milkshake.
And
Yeah.
what's your name, Paul? What do you want to be?
Oh, I don't know. Lead.
Yeah.
I like
That's
it.
good, lead.
Yeah.
Put two and two together.
lead.
From Chicago, we don't only have lead in the soil; we have lead in the air as well too. Every weekend. So
Yeah, right. That's a little scary.
yeah.
Yeah. So Paul, you said you had a couple of more lighthearted things that the company is involved in, and masking odors of some sort, or
Yeah, we do. We have it's been out a few months now, a product called Odor Defender. It actually seals and absorbs those offensive odors. And I'll let you guys try to figure this out again, too. Out of Colorado, it masks offensive odors from what?
Huh? Is it like recently legal out there?
Yeah, fairly recent. Yeah.
Yeah.
Marijuana, but it
Wow.
also does cigarette smoke, pet urine, and things of that nature too. Yeah, it uses a seaweed alginate, which is one of nature's most natural absorbers, and that's incorporated into the resin, and we're able to absorb those resins and while locking them in at the same time.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Nice. Sounds like a much easier way than scrubbing it all clean.
Yeah.
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 Just paint over it.
That's it. Paint over it.
Right.
Paint
Just
over that
goes-
fart.
Yeah, it just goes away.
That's it.
Well, we tested it. Interestingly enough, we had to test it in the lab, and they had to purchase product to test it with. And I remember sitting there one day in Colorado, and the actual odors escaped into the office setting, and we were curious as to we knew, but there was a couple people that didn't know what was going on, and it made for a fun time. So.
I bet. Yeah.
Yeah, right?
Not all of it's bad to test over there, huh?
Correct. Yeah. Well, we're legal here now. I think they here in
Yeah.
Illinois we passed it. I think they signed it today. Are you guys one of those 11 states? Did you legalize?
Yeah, it's coming. It just seems to be like everything else in the state of Connecticut, a debacle of some sort. So it's more along the lines of, okay, it's going to be you're going to be able to get it with a medical card, but they haven't approved all of the places that are going to grow it and all that other stuff. So it's kind of like, we've already agreed to the end result, but we haven't agreed how to get there yet. So it's just going to be one of those things. It's going to take time, but yeah, I mean, people are selling their medical marijuana places for millions and millions of dollars right now. I mean, it's gonna pop for sure around here.
I got a guy in Connecticut here who has his own contracting business. He wants out. He wants to move to California and do the pot farming and sell his business. But I don't want to buy his business.
No,
We don't want to buy the business.
no.
We want to give you the business.
We always seem to be, each of us seem to always be in the wrong field at the wrong time.
I'm telling you.
That's what it is. Yep.
Yeah.
Well,
All right, Paul. So what do you got for horror stories?
any horror stories out there, buddy?
You asked me that, and I do have a couple. One, some are to do with the paint, but one was actually to do with MT2 as part of my job too. I also go to firing ranges, both indoor and outdoor. I grab soil samples. We send them back to the lab, and they try to analyze or estimate how much lead is in the soil and come up with something to give back to the customer. Well, there was this one indoor range, and I know it was in Indiana, where the lead, the dust was so thick that you could actually see gray on the walls. And, the indoor guys back in the office, they're going to watch this and say, we see that all the time. But this was also in the food area, which they had right outside the shooting range. There was a kitchen and tables, and you could rub your hand on the table and it would come up gray from the lead dust.
Oh,
Man.
So to expand on that, it's somewhat recently, over the last few years, our officers have learned that they're taking this home to their children.
Yes.
sure.
when
It's
you
like
go
silicosis. Yeah, it's
when
like
you go
silicosis. Yeah.
if you guys are shooters, you should wash your hands after you go to a range. Certainly your feet go on it should be off tack mats and so forth. You're bringing that back home. If you live alone, that's fine. But if you have children, you got to be cognitive of those your family members, so you don't bring that back home.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. It was actually that thick that they could just you could wipe it. That's
Wow.
ugh.
That's intense.
Yeah.
That's intense.
Yeah,
Who-
and
who's-
we're not in the business of reporting anyone. We offer them suggestions. We certainly want to help them out.
Yeah, great.
And do what we can with their filtration systems, their backstops, their berms, updating their technology and things like that nature. We'll try to always help them out.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Very cool.
But okay, going back to paint, I guess the worst case scenarios I've seen were some structures where you've probably gone into them if you're both in carpentry and so forth, is where some structures, the lead paint is actually raining off the ceilings or the walls
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
in sheets.
Yep.
Yes.
It's
Yep.
flaking. It's alligatoring.
Yep.
Yeah. And then the customer's like, can you do here? Just scrape that down and give me a nice, smooth, baby ass, ceiling. And I was like, no, can't do it.
Nope.
Well,
Can't do it.
Paul
unfortunately,
can.
it's still in our schools. Philadelphia schools. New York came back today. I was reading it this morning. I think, 4 schools tested positive for lead. It made the news. You can Google that. Oregon, 20-something schools have lead.
Wow.
Mm.
Wow.
So people brush it off and say, well, you know what? What's the big deal? We're cognitive. We try. You're not going to put it in their mouths as long as it's not peeling or flaking. But you know what? Some of these schools are elementary schools. These children are 5, 6 years old.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't know.
No, of course not.
And how can a teacher watch a class of 30-something odd students?
Mm-hmm.
That are picking and grabbing and pulling everything,
So we're happy to say with a product like EcoBond, it's a paint product. You can actually put it on a substrate. It's going to lower the bioaccessibility and protect those students at the same time.
Yeah.
So
Good.
Now, Paul, just one last thing too.
Yeah.
So, like, if we're looking at that ceiling that's peeling and cracking and everything else, if we run your product over the top of that, then we can just kind of scrape that off afterwards, and it would be safe. Yes.
you can
That's amazing.
using RRP, lead safe practice rules. You have to.
Yeah.
You have to. I tell a lot of these homeowners that'll call me and say, you know what, I got lead on the outside of my house. What do I do? I'm going to go out there and just blast it off. Okay, it's going to go all over the neighborhood. Betty Homemaker, she's looking at her curtains right now, looking at you do it. She's going to call the local authorities, and they're going to be on you. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And then if you're a contractor, a painter, or anything along those lines, and you get caught, forget it.
You're out of business.
You're out of business.
$37,000 fine.
Yep. Per incident. Yep.
Yep.
That's crazy, man.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't do that. Hey, can you, besides brushing it and rolling it on, can you spray it on with a sprayer machine?
Yeah, good question. You can brush, roll it, spray it. I hesitated because people say, well, wait a minute, how can I brush it on peeling or flaking? It's going to come off on the roller. So that's where the spraying would come into effect.
Gotcha. Yeah, it would make more sense.
One coat, 2 coats?
1 coat is sufficient. But if you have high elevated levels, 2 coats. We only failed 1 T-clip once. T-clip is a leachability test for disposal. And she called, it was a city hall. She called and she says, you know what, this Paul, your product, it went on great, but we failed the T-clip. We can't dispose of. So we asked her, what are your levels at? How many coats of lead paint? Some of these structures, we did a structure from 1750. It could have 15, 20 layers of paint. So
Absolutely.
she got back to us. She says it has, I don't know, she said 10 layers, I believe it was. We said put a little more in there. She did. We passed.
Wow.
We never failed a T-clip.
That's awesome.
So that was for disposal, guys. I don't know if I'm speaking too fast. So
No.
I get it.
Yeah, absolutely. No. Very interesting. Great product. I really learned a lot. I'm just happy that we just go right over to Home Depot and grab the stuff. You know? I see it all the time when we look at the lead and stuff like that. So now this is a much more reasonable, affordable alternative for the homeowners.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
which I think is great.
Cool.
Let me know if you guys want to sample. If you ever have something going on, we could certainly send a representative out there. We got people on each coast.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Actually, what we'll do is this, Paul. If we're gonna do that job, and if I get another lead job, I'll give you a shout, holler, send a guy over, and we'll film it. We'll just film it and show you what's going on and how the product works, and we'll post it on our page.
Yeah, we'll do like an old house.
There you go. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
We'll get the transients together again.
The transients will be together. Yes.
The three of us. One more time. Get us together. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, most certainly. That'd be the transients. We'll do a little rap routine and
nice. Look at you. You remember the rap stuff. That's great.
The burger and the beer and the pillow.
Okay,
yeah, I'll represent Chi-Town, and you guys could be East Coast.
We'll be East Coast. Yep.
EC.
From the streets of Nyack.
Yeah, right. Wugga, wugga, wugga.
Yeah. Paul, thanks very much for coming on our show. We really do appreciate it. You're welcome anytime. We had a good time.
No,
thanks,
this
Paul.
was great. And I watched a couple of your episodes. I watched episode, I believe it was 34. You talked about lead before, and you were nice enough to bring me back again to talk about lead. I know it's not a popular, interesting subject to many, but it's still prevalent across the country, and I think we have to address it.
Absolutely.
People want to know about it. People do want to know about it, so that's why it's on the show.
Yeah, we got a lot of people. I mean, we have some contractors and stuff that listen to us, but mostly it's the homeowner and the DIYers and stuff. So that sort of information we love to try to just pass on to them to make, if they're gonna tackle some of these projects on their own, if they know the right way to do it, they're gonna be safer. So that's our goal.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
Right.
Excellent.
Perfect, Paul. Thanks again. We really appreciate it. Jimmy, you all set?
I'm all set, brother.
All right, let's call it a day then.
See ya.
All right, see you guys next week. Bye.
See you later. Bye-bye.